So how we experience life is something happens. Someone says something. I'll use myself as an example. When my wife says something to me that feels controlling, that's a triggering event. I don't want my wife controlling me. And so immediately I tap into an emotion. It's instantaneous. Okay? Anger, resentment. I mean, I've mapped out the systems of beliefs that I have around this stuff, and I can show you. It'll blow your mind. But trust me, the way you experience it is you feel this, something happens at a triggering event. Next thing that happens is you respond. Okay? Now, this is a dynamic. Okay? This is the mechanics of reality of how things actually work. Or is it? I would submit that this is really what takes place. So let's rewind a second. I'm going to go back through this again. The way we tend to understand the way we experience things is we go straight to an emotion, right? Not so. In that millisecond before we feel the emotion, and Aaron knows about how the body works here, is we filter our triggering event through the belief system first. Okay, now we need to understand about this. It's very important that when you believe something, you're making a choice. You're choosing to believe something, and that is a choice of your will. When you believe something, you have chosen to believe something. So when you choose to believe something that's based in falsehood, you're going to have a negative feeling. By and large. Okay? So instead of going to the feeling first, we actually go to a belief, then we go to the feeling. Okay? And then we respond. And this all happens just instantaneously for many of us. Some of us, we can peacefully respond, take a second, go through, let it filter through the beliefs, kind of slice it, dice it up, and then choose how we feel, and we're calm and cool and collected. Others of us just go bam, right to the feeling. Okay. So then, we tap into this spiritual dynamic. This is, again, when I talk about spiritual dynamics, this is an immaterial part of who you are. This happens inside of your consciousness, and inside your mind, and in your conscience, and in your emotions, and it's your soul that it happens in. That's why it's called soul care. But so through intercessory prayer, we trigger these mechanisms, and we walk through them to resolution. And what happens is, through the dynamics of truth, when God replaces His truth in these places where you may be believing something that's triggering an emotional pain or a physical pain, we invite God's truth into that place, and when you hear God's truth, it resolves it, and it brings perfect peace. And that's how what I would describe Aaron's testimony when he forgave his dad, when he said, all of a sudden it was all gone. I had no negative feelings around my father at all. That is what happens in the truth dynamic when you choose to go through this process. This is actually a form of obedience, because God commands you to be not conformed to this world. Be transformed. If you go into James 1, Psalm 32, Jeremiah 33, and there's stories all over in the Bible about how this dynamic works and how God says, I will heal you. Why would we be surprised about that? It is miraculous. Why wouldn't we be introducing this into the clinical setting? Okay, so the second dynamic is the deception dynamic. Now, this is a little more hairy, okay? This is interesting stuff. And I coined this phrase, spiritual psychodynamics. I don't know what it means totally yet, but I kind of came across this in my own healing process. So I had done a bunch of the inner healing prayer stuff for years, and I still had anger issues. I couldn't shake it. I'm like, what is going on? Like, I know God loves me. I know I have peace in my heart, but when these kinds of triggering events happen, these things happen, I get upset, and I can't shake it. I can't get it off me, okay? So over a long period of time, I discovered that not only do you need to operate in intercessory prayer in the truth dynamics, okay, and invoke God's truth into these places where you have false beliefs. But there's also demonic stuff going on. Okay? If you're believing something that is not of God or in accordance with God's truth, even if it's off just a little bit, remember I talked about the subtleness and the destruction of deception, is that it can be so itty-bitty. And if it's something that causes a negative response in you, then there's a chance, there's a possibility that there's some demonic forces at work. Okay? Not necessarily, but we want to explore that. We want to kind of go there. So here's a way to address that. A lot of this, an initial kind of deliverance type prayer setting would be, an example of it would be using Neil Anderson stuff. I notice you have Steps of Freedom up there. That's a great kind of a general deliverance thing where you pray through the 7 steps of freedom. A lot of strongholds and bondages are broken there. But there's other ones that are much deeper, that may be on an unconscious level. You just can't seem to shake them. What I understand about it now is that there is a spiritual bond between your stimulus and your response. So for example, my wife tries to control me, I get angry with her, and I retaliate. Okay? What I'm saying to you is that there is a spiritual bond between those two. Just like in forgiveness. Unforgiveness can literally kill you. Unforgiveness, did you know that bitterness causes severe rheumatoid arthritis, cancers? They can even tell you what kind of bitterness causes cancer of which breast, right breast or left breast, what kind of bitterness it is. Did you know they have that all mapped out? This information is truth, it's real. And so, if you have that unforgiveness in your life, you've got to root that out. You've got to find it, you've got to address it, and the way you address it is you and or a prayer minister with you to the first few times, but then eventually you got to start doing your own work. You got to write down these things that are triggering events. What are the things that kind of hack me off? And how do I respond? If someone tries to control me, I think I made a list of about 45 things, and I took each and every connection, each and every response, and I dealt with it in prayer. Okay? Other things that can play into it is a stimulus and cause you to believe something false about yourself. But are those thoughts originating with me? I found that they weren't. I personally found that the father of lies was speaking those to me.